You're an agribusiness executive navigating an increasingly competitive market while trying to grow your company. Mergers and acquisitions are pitched as an accelerant to growth, but many M&A deals destroy more value than they create. Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches for successful mergers and acquisitions. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Hello and welcome to the only show on the internet dedicated to helping the leaders of small to middle market food and agribusinesses deliver great results through better strategy execution. This is the Pacesetter Pod, and I'm your host, Joe Mosier. What happens after an M&A transaction is closed? And I mean, after all the champagne bottle popping and all the back clapping and all the speeches wind down, what happens next? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. In addition to running the ongoing business, the integration process gets underway. And I know we talk a lot about how often leaders fail to go into this phase with a plan for creating value after the deal. But even if the team that's leading a business post-acquisition comes in equipped with a well-thought-out plan, where they've clearly defined the work they want to do, they've brought it all tightly together, they know what good looks like, they know what the deliverables are, there's still a lot of ways that work can go sideways. And I've seen many times that even those folks who do go in with a pretty strong plan, ostensibly, that plan itself sometimes sows the seeds of all the productivity loss and value destruction that comes in the months ahead. And so that's what I want to spend some time talking with you about today. And now this may seem to be a little bit, overly tactical at the outset, but there's really something here worth spending time on. I'm not going to spend time today trying to convince you that you need a plan to integrate the businesses. I'm hoping I don't have to convince you of that. But rather, I want to talk to you about how your integration plan is structured and about how the structure that you take reflects where all of your energy, all of your focus, all of your investments are going to go in the weeks, months, and years ahead. And how about a change to that approach can dramatically improve the odds that your M&A integration activities are going to drive the value that you expected when you made the decision to buy another business or to merge with a competitor. And so what I want to do is I want to evaluate this through three different parts. The first thing we want to talk about today is what everyone does today when they're planning their M&A integration and why they do it. So really get rooted in what the current state is and why we do it that way. Next, we're going to talk about what we miss when we just follow the conventional thinking and integration planning, what the risks are. And then finally, introduce a new approach, a novel new take on this that puts conventional thinking about integration planning on its head and how it might help you get to value quicker and more effectively without the value loss that accompanies a lot of transactions. So let's jump in. First, again, what is the traditional approach to M&A integration, and why do we do it? Nearly every integration plan out there looks like this. We take a bunch of work streams, and those work streams reflect the way that the organization is running today. And when I say work stream, it's things like, an HR work stream, accounting, warehousing, logistics, maybe sales and marketing together or separate. And if you're not familiar with the term work stream, it's sort of a mini project within a larger project. So for example, an HR work stream within an integration plan might detail all the activities about combining payroll processes, about aligning the health benefit plans and administration, about how you're going to manage employee data, how you're going to ensure the training on compliance items like workplace harassment or anti-bribery. So the HR work stream is really all the human resource focused components of integration brought together in one project plan, which then rolls up into the master project plan. In the accounting work stream, that would include things like how are you going to integrate your process for creating purchase orders? How are you going to align the way that you pay invoices? How you monitor credit, how you manage receivables, things like that. And my gut and my experience, frankly, says that this version of integration planning is what you see in more than 95% of the plans out there, agribusiness or otherwise. Why is this so common? Here's my theory. It's familiar and it's comfortable. When we build an integration plan or any project plan like this, it's exactly the way we build project plans for all the other large undertakings and large projects that a company does. So things like implementing a new core technology or a new ERP system. It's the same approach you might take if you're building a new facility and trying to bring it online. Would be the same if you're thinking about how do you communicate a restructuring effort. If you're redesigning your organization's structure, you would think about, okay, what do we need to do from a people standpoint? What do we need to do from an accounting standpoint? What do we do from a warehousing and logistics standpoint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's comfortable and it's familiar. And frankly, it works. There's a reason we do this. It works. And because it works, we keep doing it. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. This approach is not wrong. If it's worked in the past, why wouldn't it work again? It's just that while it's not wrong in the context of an M&A integration, it's incomplete. So just keep that in mind. It's incomplete. Which brings me to my second point today. What do we miss when we take this very comfortable, very familiar, conventional thinking about how to structure a large-scale change, and then we apply it to an M&A integration? And the simple answer is that the scope of the focus that I just outlined is bound by the four walls of your business. It's internally focused. And a better answer is that this approach, it encourages that kind of myopia, that myopic thinking, where you only focus on your business, you focus on how your business operates. And when it does that, it does so at the expense of all the other important stakeholders that make your business what it is. Thinking about your customers, thinking about your suppliers, thinking about new potential talent that you want to bring into the organization, thinking about your other stakeholders in the community. And so when we pull this together, the combination of focusing inward at the expense of looking outward leads integration teams to decouple their integration activities from what the original M&A targets and intentions were. Let me just say that again. You're looking inward. You're not looking at the external stakeholders who are going to be heavily impacted by your M&A activity. And by looking inward, you often also pull the attention away from why you're doing the transaction in the first place. And this is something we talked a lot about in the early days of this podcast, but let me summarize something here. Traditional integration plans, we put a heavy upfront emphasis on things like combining bank accounts between the two legacy organizations, consolidating payroll systems, trying to manage counterparty credit exposure by aligning the different credit processes. We spend a lot of time trying to pull together how we approve payments to make sure there's no gaps in the control environment. We spend a lot of effort on how are we going to structure the bonuses and the short and long-term incentives of employees now that we've got this new company together. And I've even seen companies really go all in those first 90 days around how are we going to establish and approve maintenance budgets and how are we going to manage capital expenditures at the facilities. And they may even put a top priority label I've seen on things like we got to make sure all of our salespeople have new branded polos. We need to make sure everyone has the right business cards. We need everyone to be on one email address naming convention right away. And that's all fine and good. Payroll and bank accounts and CapEx and how your sales force is presenting. That's all great, but it misses something really important. Odds are that none of those things that I just mentioned are the reason that you did the M&A transaction in the first place. I've never seen an M&A charter that said one of the value drivers here is we have the opportunity to combine two powerful sales forces and have new polo shirts for all of them. Or we're going to unlock huge value by getting all these employees into one payroll system. Or we have such a dramatically better way of budgeting for maintenance at a facility that once we roll these new assets into our process, the deal basically pays for itself. Those are never value drivers. And yet they become the upfront focus area of the integrations. So again, none of these things are major commercial drivers. And they are not the basis of a business case. They don't drive the efficiencies that make an M&A deal make sense. So again, yes, operational efficiencies are critical to helping a new organization create value, and the pressure is there and it should be. But too often what I see headlining a typical integration plan is not what I see at the heart of the investment charter and the business case that you took to the board to get the deal approved in the first place. And that's a problem. So conventional integration structures are going to focus all that energy away from the value drivers that are expected from the M&A deal, away from your external stakeholders that keep your business functioning, whether on the supply side or on the demand side. And this is a problem, perhaps the problem, that contributes most greatly to all the subpar results that we see from agribusiness M&A. Big promises, lots of excitement, disappointing on the back end.
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
So this brings me to the last part of today's topic. If what we do today is incomplete or wrong, what is a better way? And this is where it gets a little bit complex. It's simple in principle, but really difficult in execution. We need to think about ways to augment, not replace, the workstream focus. And we need to do so in a way that dovetails from your M&A business case. So I'm going to start off with some examples. A novel new workstream approach that we use might have workstreams like customer success. And it would answer that project plan, that workstream would answer questions like, what do customers from both the legacy organizations, both the buyer and the seller, or the two merging organizations, what do those customers need to know? What do they need to believe? What do they need to understand? What do they need to receive? Or even what do they need to do to be successful during integration? It's an all-in, full-throated effort around saying, okay, this integration is going to be tough. Here's what we have to do for our customers. And similarly, maybe what do your suppliers need in order to navigate all of this turbulence? What do your suppliers need to understand, to believe, to receive, to do, to kind of get through all that uncertainty that comes with post-M&A integration? And what this does is it expands your perspective beyond the four walls of your business, which is really, really important, because I can assure you that the M&A integration activity is going to really try to get your focus to collapse in on itself. And this at the outset expands your focus outside your four walls. And then you build on it further. And you start to think about your M&A value drivers. If one of your value drivers, you would have a combined, say, pipeline of new products. You'd have products at different stages of R&D. You would have the capabilities to bring them to market more quickly. You would be able to market them, distribute them, and basically take a leadership position as the innovator in your space, for example. Then build a work stream around it and make that a focus from day one. If upskilled innovation and R&D capabilities were front and center in your M&A deal charter, they need to be front and center in your integration plan. Or if maybe on the flip side, if you said one of the values of this deal is that we're going to capture all kinds of efficiencies because these organizations coming together have huge fleets of trucks and trailers and field applicators. And this is all part of the justification of the merger. We think we can unlock a lot of value by using this combined fleet in a more efficient way. Build a focused plan on fleet efficiency. Put a team on it right away. Don't start focusing on making sure that you have a consolidated insurance program for all these. That's important, but that can't come at the expense of actually changing the way that those fleets operate. So some examples of what we've done with clients in the past that have had some outsized impact include things like we had a deal where getting access to the sales talent, which was really coveted, that was key. And so we built a targeted rehire work stream, is what it was called. And it was built solely around trying to engage and retain and reward this new combined sales force and get them fired up and ready to go to hit these incremental targets on the way to growing the overall sales of the organization. Access to the sales talent was really important to the deal, and that importance showed up front and center on the integration plan. In another project where we were helping blend together two strong industry brands to create a market leadership position, they created a key product branding work stream. There was hundreds of products and SKUs, but there was this cohort of core leading products, key products. And that was the focus of the branding efforts on the front end. How are we going to bring these together so that, one, not just we can market and distribute them to the marketplace, because now we've got this complete suite of full farm offerings, but how are we going to do it in a way that makes sense for the organization, that customers understand what we're offering, that we can properly position ourselves in the marketplace as different and better than the competition. And then, of course, we always advocate with all of our clients that they create an MVI work stream. And MVI in this context is minimum viable integration. And so having a consolidated plan that looks at what are the minimum viable integration deliverables you need to drive value. We're not going to talk about MVI today, but if MVI is a new term for you, I would encourage you to dig back into our archives, our back catalog, and listen to an episode from back in April of 23. And the title is Less is More in Agribusiness M&A, the minimum viable integration. That'll really help you think differently about how to build out what does integration need to do to drive post M&A success. And then what we're talking about today will help you figure out how to structure that in an actionable plan. Again, these are generally, all these I'm talking about, they're going to be in addition to that traditional internally focused workstream approach that we all rely on. And that's the downside here, just to be perfectly honest. The downside of this new approach is that it's going to increase some of the internal complexity. You're still going to have your HR work stream. You're still going to have your accounting work stream. You're still going to have your logistics work stream. And now you're going to layer on a work stream that focuses exclusively on your customers or on your suppliers. Or you're going to have work streams that are going to focus on specific deal value drivers. And I don't want to underplay that. That is an increase in complexity and trying to keep those work streams aligned. But the upside of that downside is that you're going to deliver better results to your external stakeholders. You're going to deliver better results to the business. You're going to help create the value that you promised. And overall, you're going to get better results long-term for your business. So the short-term complexity is absolutely worth the long-term gain. And also what's most important too, is when you fail to think about putting your customers and suppliers and other stakeholders front and center in your integration planning, what tends to happen is the questions that are unanswered, the problems that are unsolved or even unidentified, those get outsourced. All that pain gets outsourced to your external stakeholders. And that's a net negative for you. You don't want your customers pointing out problems you haven't thought of. You don't want your suppliers experiencing pain and friction that you haven't solved for yet. The complexity is going to exist, yes or yes, but this approach insources it so that your team can figure it out, which, while painful, is far better in the long term, that you all figure out in-house and you don't outsource the complexity to your customers or your suppliers. So to briefly recap what we covered today, we talked about what everyone does when they're planning their M&A integrations and why they do it that way. We talked about what you miss and what you risk when you blindly follow the conventional thinking on structuring your M&A integration. And we introduced a new way that you can structure your integration that starts with your customers, starts with your suppliers, and starts with the original business case and builds from there. I hope that's helpful. I really appreciate you guys tuning in today. Thank you as always for listening to the Pacesetter Pod. Before we go, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. Like and share this content with others that you think would benefit from the conversations and the topics. And of course, if you ever need to, you can get in touch with me, Joe Mosier, by connecting on LinkedIn or by setting up a call with me directly from our website, www.mosiercg.com. Best of luck in your growth ambitions. Keep executing well. Thank you for listening and have a safe day.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.